Welcome to the first installment of the Pro and B Soccer Podcast. I'm Corey Stevenson, and this is my co-host, Robert Humphrey. Today we have a special guest, Tighe O'Sullivan, Director of Pro and B Soccer. Ty, welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you.
Okay, Ty. So, who are some of the individuals you would hang your hat on that utilize sand training?
It's interesting to note. I mean, outside of soccer, obviously, I've mentioned many times, Walter Payton, but when we get into the soccer realm, in addition to Walter Payton, Russell Westbrook, who's I'm not a huge fan of the way he plays basketball or his camaraderie with his teammates or how he fits into different teams. But from the standpoint of like how fit he is and how mobile he is, he's someone that utilizes sand in a huge way. There's plenty of videos like right now from him during the training, preparing for the bubble in Orlando, that he was doing hardcore sand training, getting ready for the playoffs in the NBA. If I was going to go through those that I really hang my hat on, obviously Eric Cantona, first and foremost, for anyone of my generation, is such a huge proponent of the game. He was a legend at Manchester United, and there's no one like him that can really explain it the best. Where it's not about the beach, it's about the sand. Everyone can do it, and there's just so much joy in it. But you've seen players like Romario, who was the leading goal scorer for Brazil in the '94 World Cup. He's a huge person in foot volley. He's now a politician in Brazil, but he also played in the first FIFA World Cup for Brazil in the sand. Danny Alves, his whole mantra is, he says, he's quoted as saying he owes his talent to playing on the beach because that is where he grew his talent. Because beach soccer requires a lot of technique, and this helps any soccer player grow. I mean, this is, former captain of the team that won Copa America for Brazil, played at Juventus, played at Barcelona, played at PSG. His partner in crime for foot volley is Neymar, who yet is another player that has established so much of his technique in the sand. David Beckham used it in regards to getting fit for PSG when he was there. There's certainly a fairly long list of different players that are big fans of it. And it's not just like, these are household names. It's not just like, some guy from, Timbuktu saying, hey, I play in the sand and it's done well for me. These are world-class, top of the line, some of the highest paid players in the world. So I don't know how you can argue with them.
Yeah, I've seen players like Julio Jones and Odell have camps where they just train in the sand. But name that comes to mind when I think about sand is Robert Edwards, who he was playing flag football and he actually got injured towards ACL in the sand from the way he landed. So would you say that there are any misconceptions about the turf that cause more injuries?
Turf? Oh, that's a loaded question for me. At a time, I was a huge proponent of turf. One of the biggest in my community anyway. Really pushing for it because the grass we were playing on was like this fescue. I don't want to get into all the technicalities, which I could in regards to the types of grass that are used for sports. But fescue is a drought-resistant grass that basically grows in clumps. So think about running on a field where there's just clump after clump after clump, and your ankles are going this way and that way. I mean, basically, you're playing with your ankles taped all the time so you don't twist it. Turf to me was great. But the reality is now the studies are coming out, whether we're talking about staph infections or we're talking about, the carbon or so many of the other stuff that you find in the tires and so on and so forth, and the fact that it doesn't give. You catch a cleat in turf and you do your knee. There's so many people that like I think in the time when the science or the studies are really done closely, you're going to see an increase in the amount of knee injuries comparatively in the past. And actually, a lot of those could be dealt with by just putting people in the sand. because you're being able to develop the entire leg instead of, like Bayern Munich has moved away from gyms and weight rooms and done everything in the sand because it gives a more developed muscle mass. You're not just doing your quads, your calves, your hamstrings. You're doing everything, all the joints, everything's active in the sand, and it always gives. So the amount of injuries, especially knee injuries, are much lower, and they usually come from collisions rather than somebody twisting something, because it doesn't really happen that much.
For someone who isn't, or that doesn't say, or someone who says, you know what, sand is a hoax, or sand is, and it's not all that, what would you say to persuade them that sand is an actual better alternative?
Point towards the academic studies. The studies out of Western Australia University in Perth, they were first conducted in the mid 2000s, and then someone ended up taking a lot of those studies and doing a PhD on it. They examined players in the English Premier League. They looked at team athletics in regards to team training in sand, and they did all the measurements in a proper way. The unfortunate thing is that there really isn't enough, there haven't been enough studies done, but the ones that have been done have been pretty straightforward and empirical data that you just can't really argue with. So when someone is negative about it, you address not only the science behind it, but then you kind of get into more of the biggest injury that people talk about is they talk about broken toes. Oh, my players, I don't play beach soccer because my players are going to get injured because of a broken, they're going to break their toes. This is important one to basically destroy, and I might be answering this a little bit early because this is probably one of the ones I should be saying about in the myths. But the reality is, when you're going to go and hit somebody, are you going to hit them with an open hand? No, you're going to make a fist, because that's going to give you the most power. That's going to lock your wrist. Here you're like like that. But when you make a fist, you're locked all the way through. You have a solid mass. Well, it's the same thing with your foot. When you're in the sand, you have to bend your toes. That way, nothing drags. Well, the reality is that coaches should be teaching players to do this in their boots, because when you do this, you make a more solid surface. We as coaches teach players to kick the ball like this, right, with the instep right along the bridge of the foot. And we obviously are telling them to lock their ankles. But the thing is that we have our toes extended, and we're trying to elongate our foot as much as humanly possible. But if you actually bend your toes inside your boot, like we tell them to do in the sand, and the reason in the sand is now you've got knuckles going through the sand. You're not extending, and this big toe isn't dragging. That's your broken toe. That's the one that everyone talks about. And it's not really a broken toe 90% of the time. It's turf toe. It's because they're not bending their toes, and so therefore they're dragging in the sand, and you're getting that sort of turf toe action where it's in the joint, and it feels like it's broken, but it's not. You can play on it. It just sucks for weeks. But if a coach teaches them how to do it in the sand and then creates that repetition in their mindset, that now when they go to the grass, they say, how we kick in the sand? Do it on the grass. Do it inside your boot. Because now you have a much truer, stronger locked ankle. You have a much more consistent contact with the ball, because no matter which way you move your body, if you are curling your toes, you're locking your ankle in a specific position every single time, being the same, so that when that ball in the air is coming at you, you can address it in a way that it is much more fortuitous to your game.
So Todd, going into some more myths, I'm interested in hearing more myths, because some people might say, hey, sand is an unpredictable surface, it's uneven and gives a lot. So I want to hear some more myths or misconceptions that people have about training in the sand.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. The biggest myths are, one, coaches saying that there's not enough time, or it's the wrong time. You know, a lot of our beach events, they take place in the summertime when clubs take a break. Well, not every, you know, in this day and age where parents are a little different right now with COVID, but in this day and age, parents are always looking for summer camp or something for their kids to do in the summertime to give them the freedom of going to work or what have you. Having a beach soccer training doesn't mean you need all 18 players or 16 players at your session. So if you have 8 people, if you have 6, you have enough for a team. So it being summertime isn't actually a negative. It's actually a positive because, one, the coach can continue to earn his living based on how much time he wants to do it, or pass it on to somebody else who can keep his players improving over the summer instead of regressing. That also then ends up making them stronger, obviously, when they get to the fall, when it's much where you need to be more durable. Long, tough season of training every day and multiple games on the weekends, and you know, anyone that does beach soccer in the summertime is going to be much better. But another myth is also in time is that they don't have the time to fit it in with their plyometrics and their pattern play and their shooting practice and so on and so forth. But the reality is if you're shooting on an uneven surface with sand, your players are going to have much more focus on the ball because you actually have to watch the ball as it rolls in and out of holes, and you have to catch it at the top of a hole, which allows them to slow the ball down. So that reality of like saying they don't have a time because they need to practice shooting on the grass, or they need to run the grass, or need to apply it, all that stuff can be done in the sand. And as you know, we've already discussed in amplitude in a large way, the ROI of what you get training in the sand compared to grass is far greater. So the whole time aspect of it's a complete myth. You're actually taking more time in the grass to do something you can do twice as fast in the sand, or not always twice as fast. Sometimes 3/4 quicker, sometimes a quarter quicker, depending on what we're talking about. The injury, as we talked about, you know, if it caused more injuries, beach soccer, if it caused more injuries, then all the major clubs in the world wouldn't be spending so much time using it to prevent injuries. So that's yet another myth. The other thing is, the other excuse is that they don't have a beach. And so they live in Kansas, or they live in Iowa, or, you know, Arizona. Well, you don't need a beach, you need sand. And all those places I just mentioned have massive beach volleyball facilities that could host large scale events if somebody wanted to. You know, the one that kills me the most is that it doesn't do anything to improve your grass game. I've had this conversation with high level futsal people, and it really kind of offended me because, you know, it's like, you do futsal, you know, it's like, it's not soccer either. You know, it's a different technique. It's learning how to address the ball and manipulate the ball in different ways. And beach soccer, in my opinion, is a much more highly skilled game than both grass soccer and futsal. Not taking anything away from both games, which are brilliant, but you're needing to be able to manipulate a ball in a way of like pulling it up out of the sand. And it develops muscles that you just can't find, or skills that you can't develop playing on a hard surface. But those skills, when you go back to a hard surface, you can actually utilize them, whether it's like flicking with the 3 small toes, or being able to address the ball better in the air, because so much of the game of beach soccer, if done correctly, is in the air. I think at the end of the day, there's many more myths. But the reality is coaches have no idea how to coach in the sand. So they're not going to put themselves in a position of going out and kind of fumbling over something that they don't know how to do. And that's one of the reasons why we are trying to get the information out, so that, you know, people can take advantage of this, and they can put themselves in a position of taking their elite players and bringing them even to a higher level, or taking their average players and giving them the opportunity of seeing the game in a different light. Because once you play beach soccer, the way you play grass changes. and you look at the game differently, and you're more patient because everything is so much more close quarters. You know, as a young player, I remember having anxiety, you know, about, you know, dealing with situations on the field. But with the players that play beach soccer, they're put in these situations far more often and in a different surface. And so much of it is about holding people off. And it creates an ease at which they address the game when they go back to the grass. We've seen it time and time again. It's just a matter of people witnessing it for themselves and destroying these myths that people like to play with to create excuses why they either don't train in sand or don't allow their kids to play in beach soccer tournaments, which I think is criminal at the end of the day.
So on the individual level and even on the team level, would you consider sand a long-term solution for training?
I think it's a long-term solution as part of an overall curriculum. Nothing's going to take away from the fact that a player needs to be developed in an 11-a-side game. You know, whether you're playing 11-a-side, 9-a-side, 5-a-side, you know, all of these pieces are very important to development of the overall athlete and player. And if you want to play in college and you want to play even at professional level, you need to address the overall concept of the 11-a-side game. But from the standpoint of, is it something that should be utilized as part of a year-long training module? Absolutely. You know, futsal is been slotted in. I mean, back in the day, you know, as a side note, you know, futsal was around when I was younger, but I would have much rather play off the wall. You know, off the wall was like no out of bounds, bang, 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 fast, you know, whatever.
Right.
It didn't help the development of the game. But the futsal wasn't either marketed correctly or it wasn't taught in a way that, you know, coaches really, you know, took advantage of it. Kids just wanted to play. But now futsal has become everybody's favorite flavor. I think a lot of that had to do with the videos of Ronaldinho as a child, you know, playing futsal and being able to see these in the computer generation with YouTube. Those videos showing how he had these unbelievable skills and how that translates to how he became such an amazing grass soccer player were pivotal in many ways of exposing the advantages of playing futsal. But the thing is he didn't just play futsal. So many of those moves that he uses playing futsal are things that he developed on the sand. So yeah, I believe that sand should be incorporated into any organization's, you know, curriculum, because it's going to help them become more durable. It's going to introduce them to techniques that they can't find training on a hard surface. And it's going to put them in a situation where they see the game differently. Anytime you're kicking a ball, it's going to improve your game. And what better way to improve your game than to put them in a situation, whether it's playing foot volley, you know, over the like volleyball with your feet, or playing beach soccer. There's a coach from Japan. He's actually from Bolivia, Japanese Bolivian, and he coaches one of the top Japanese beach soccer teams. And he grew up with Marco Echeverri, El Diablo, you know, who played for DC United and was one of the best MLS players of all time. And he grew up with him playing in the Tighe Academy. And he said to me, and it made all the sense in the world, there is no more difficult, more skillful, more tactical game than beach soccer. Every time the ball is touched, anytime there's a throw-in, it's tactics. And the skills needed to be able to play the game, which is mostly in the air, creates a scenario where both grass and futsal just can't really touch it, because you're having to hit balls off an uneven surface and or play it out of the air. And with it being 5-a-side and everything basically being a shot on goal like every 30 seconds, You know, there's nothing that really matches it. So yes, long answer, but yes.
So, Todd, really quick, research says that in order for people to believe in opposing argument, you need to have 3 outstanding points. And for someone like me or Robert who doesn't have a greater understanding of beach soccer, pro am beach soccer, or training in the sand, can you give us 3 quick points, 3 main staples that you would stick your argument on?
Yeah, I could give you a lot more, but I will stick with makes you more durable and less injury prone, makes you run faster and jump further, and basically takes your skills to a completely different level because you have to basically deal with a ball that's always being played in the air. I mean, those are the 3 easiest. I mean, make yourself more durable so you don't get injured, and play with greater skill level and faster and stronger. I mean, what else can you ask for?
Who could turn that down?
Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, you know, and this is scientifically backed. It's not like I'm just speaking out of my keister. You know, this is like, you know, for the most part, you can look at the data and be like, okay, I can't argue that. And that's just reality. And the problem is that too many people, especially in this day and age, they're going to fight reality. They're going to create their own. And fortunately, science backs me, but that doesn't always mean so much these days either.
All right. Was that all the questions?
I think
I might be getting a little too political there.
I think that's perfect. It added a serious note at the end to where people, they really get the point.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything we're missing?
I think we...
Professional, sand first thoughts, difficult, soreness, blah, 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 misconception training, sand causes injuries, got it, myths, got it. I think we got it all.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good.
Well, first time, I'm not mad at it.
I gotta get like something in the background that says like pro-am or something, or get you guys.
Or they can get, or you can get your digital team to get you a little banner right there.
Those don't always look so good though, man.
I was thinking, you give me a big old green screen and just have pro-am in the background.
Yeah, not a bad idea. It doesn't work on this computer. I can do it on my phone, but like, I can show you an example here. Where are we?
What do you think about rehabbing in sand?
Rehabbing in sand? I don't even need to think about it. I mean, it's something that it's being done by every major soccer club in the world. I mean, if you look up Bayern Munich TV, Barcelona TV, Real Madrid TV, there's videos of Messi, Suarez, Bale. You know, you can even look up Chelsea. Just look up Chelsea and beach soccer, and you'll see John Terry recovering in sand. And as mentioned, you know, I mean, Bayern Munich has completely moved away from weight rooms and gyms to concentrate on sand. It's so many of the smartest people in the world are utilizing it for injury recovery because it's easier on your body, it's easier on your joints, and it activates everything. You know, it activates every little single tiny little muscle, and so it really isn't rocket science. It's something that's being utilized by all the highest level professional athletes, and to hear people like speak negatively about it, it's just like, sure, right. I mean, those are my thoughts on it. I mean, it's like I said, it's not rocket science.
I mean, I still don't have that stabilization in my, like if I need to make that cut or anything, I don't have that type of stabilization right now. And I was wondering if sand could, you know, make that a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a knee surgery as well, but it was obviously it was an MCL, not an ACL. And in addition to that, I had chronic ankle problems throughout my playing career, from high school through college. You know, I played an entire season with a taped ankle, and months and months and months and months, well, more like years, taping my ankles, especially when playing on turf, because you would feel it, because of the lack of give that it has. And in regards to those types of my previous injuries, I have an example with the ankle, for instance. I've not had any ankle problems except for once last year. I was carrying a bag of 15 soccer balls, a bag of cones. I had all this weight on me, and I was walking through the dark in Golden Gate Park and stepped over a log right onto a root. And if I honestly believe if I wasn't attuned to sand, I would have broken my ankle in a way that would have just been devastating. I ended up spraining it, but my ankle didn't give. Like, if it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have destroyed it again. From the standpoint of my knee, it took me a long time, but as I got in the sand more, all of the fear and all of the ache and all of that revolved around my recovery from the knee surgery all went away. No fear, no nothing. I think that putting yourself in the sand, running in the deep sand, and then doing some, cutting and things like that, like light, just do it light. And you're going to see that all of the muscles and everything that surround it will be activated, and over time, you should be able to get back to where you were.
Todd, that was really interesting. So you said after your injury, you had no fear, like, because now if I go play recreationally, I play basketball recreationally, I work out recreationally, just to get stronger. I still have a fear of jumping off the knee I injured, or working out too hard, or squatting. So you had no fear of re-injuring, or it just didn't feel like that anymore?
I did at first, but it went away. I got to a point where I got beyond it. I would still sit there and, like, you would feel things after. And so you would sit there and you dig your fingers in there and kind of work out and be fearful, like, okay, what's going on here? Do I need to ice this? I mean, at times I would even, I would ice, because there would be some sort of inflammation coming from the area of the surgery. But as I trained more, and it was more of a situation where I was training more because I was recovering from a hamstring injury, all of a sudden I stopped thinking about my knee, and I haven't worried about it since. So yeah, I mean, I believe, and everyone's different, and the extreme, I don't want to use the word extremity, but I don't think that's the right phraseology. Each person has a different extent of their injury, but every physiologist and the doctor, Dr. Sonia Bell, who does all of the work with our players at our events. She works with she works with Olympic athletes, and she's tied into all the best doctors in the Bay Area. My surgeon, for instance, was the surgeon for the San Francisco Giants. She introduced him to me, and he did my surgery. But it was like, she told me, it was like, as soon as you can, get in the sand. And I thought she was loco, because I didn't have the background that I have now. That was 10 years ago. And my knee feels as good now as it ever has, and granted it was 10 years, but it took me a couple years before I even started, like, really getting myself in the sand. It's funny being in the position I am, but I was doubting, the logic and the science, and to have the knowledge I have now, I wish, I would have gotten in the sand a lot sooner, because I probably would have been able to take a little bit more advantage of my age at that time to be able to play at a little bit, continue to play at a higher level. Sand, the better the game. If you're up to your knees, go for it. I mean, obviously you're in quicksand if you're like that, but
Right.
but the deeper sand that you have, it actually makes the game much more productive, not only from the standpoint of the style of play, because now you don't really want to dribble. Like young players, when they come out and play beach soccer, they dribble, and you have to get them to understand that this game, you slow down, you look at your options, you lift the ball out of the sand and you hit it with the inside of your foot or your laces. But like these days, like when players come to a practice, for instance, on the grass, and everyone's showing up, the coach is like, go and dribble, or go and juggle the ball. Everyone's got to juggle the ball for 10-15 minutes. Let's go, get your touches in, boom 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 boom, touch, keep it in the air. Well, when you go out to the beach, it's like same thing, but lift it, get your foot underneath, lift it out of the air, lift it in the air, over and over again, left foot, right foot, lift it. So you're lifting it to your waist height, your chest height. If you're playing in hard sand, you can't do that because you can't get underneath the ball. So the whole idea is that this is the ball, you're going underneath and then popping it up. If you're in hard sand, you can't play beach soccer properly on hard sand. You can play soccer, but it's not, and it's on the beach, but it's like, again, like a whole different sport. It's more like futsal, or much more like futsal, or a small-sided soccer game.
Todd, thanks for coming on the show. This interview was very insightful, and we would like to thank our viewers for tuning in.